The afternoon sun slanted across my kitchen counter, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. "Just close friends, Mom," Silas said, not even meeting my eyes as he fiddled with the salt shaker. "No family this year." My heart sank. Oh, I managed, my voice a little thinner than I intended. I thought family might want to celebrate with you." He shrugged, a gesture that dismissed me and my decades of birthdays, Christmas mornings, scraped knees kissed better. "It's just, a casual thing." He finally looked up, a quick, nervous glance. "Don't make a big deal out of it." He turned to leave, and the words tumbled out before I could stop them. "But Silas, it's your birthday." He paused at the doorway, his hand on the frame. "Yeah, and I want to spend it with my friends." The casualness in his voice stung. "Eleanor and Julian are coming," he added, as if that explained everything. Perhaps it did. He'd been spending more and more time with them. His own family almost an afterthought these days. "Of course," I said, forcing a lightness I didn't feel. "You should have fun with your friends." He gave a curt nod and disappeared down the hall. I stood there, the sunlight suddenly feeling cold on my skin. The silence in the kitchen pressed in on me, echoing the growing silence between my son and me. I picked up a dishcloth, my hands moving mechanically as I wiped down the already spotless counter. My birthday cake plans, the little dinosaur candles I'd found at the back of the cupboard, they all seemed silly and childish now. A small, tarnished silver object caught my eye. It was nestled amongst the clutter of bills and grocery lists, half hidden under a stack of napkins. Ray's pocket watch. He'd carried it every day, a constant companion, a tangible piece of his past. Silas had always loved that watch, fascinated by its intricate workings, the smooth sweep of the second hand. Ray had promised it to him one day. "When you're old enough to appreciate it," he'd say, winking at Silas. I picked it up, the cool metal a comfort in my hand. It had been years since it last ticked. After the accident, I'd tucked it away in a drawer, too painful a reminder of all that we'd lost. But now, turning it over in my hands, I felt a flicker of something other than grief, a spark of an idea, a quiet resolve. Maybe it was time to take it out of the drawer, to bring a piece of Ray back, not just for Silas, but for myself as well. Maybe it was time for something more than dinosaur candles and forced smiles. Maybe this little piece of our past could help bridge the growing chasm between my son and me. I walked to the phone, my fingers already dialing the number of the old watchmaker in town, Theo. He was a quiet man, with hands as steady and precise as the mechanisms he repaired. I explained about the watch, the broken mainspring, the sentimental value. "I need it by Christmas," I said, my voice wavering slightly. Christmas was still months away, Silas's birthday long past, but something told me that time frame was important. It was more than just a birthday gift now. It was a message. "I'll see what I can do," Theo said, his voice gruff but kind. "It's an old piece. Parts might be tricky." "I understand," I replied, "but it's important." After I hung up, I found myself staring at the calendar, my eyes fixed on the date circled in red, December 25th. A faint smile touched my lips. Silas might think he could exclude me from his life, but I wouldn't let him forget the things that truly mattered. I wouldn't let him forget the legacy we shared, the memories that bound us together, the love that, despite everything, still beat strong in my heart. I had a feeling this Christmas was going to be interesting. The bell above Theo's door jingled a cheerful welcome, a stark contrast to the hollowness I felt. Dust motes danced in the afternoon sunbeams that slanted through the shop window, illuminating rows of clocks ticking with steady indifference. Afternoon, I said to the man bent over a workbench, his loupe magnifying the intricate workings of a timepiece. He looked up, a warm smile spreading across his face. "Karen, it's good to see you. What brings you in?" I placed a small, velvet pouch on the counter. "It's Ray's pocket watch," I explained, my voice catching slightly. "It hasn't run in years." Theo carefully opened the pouch and extracted the watch, turning it over in his hands. "A beautiful piece," he murmured, his fingers tracing the engraved initials on the back. "I remember your husband showing me this, a real family heirloom." He opened the back casing, revealing the intricate gears within. "It just needs a bit of TLC," he assured me, his smile reassuring. "Should be a simple fix." I hesitated, twisting the wedding band on my finger. "There's something else," I began, then paused, unsure how to phrase it. "I was hoping, could you engrave something on the inside of the casing?" He looked up, his expression curious. "Of course," he replied. "A special date, initials." I shook my head. "A short message," I clarified, reaching into my purse and pulling out a folded slip of paper. I handed it to him, my heart pounding in my chest. He unfolded the paper and read the words silently. For a moment, he simply looked at me, his gaze full of understanding, a powerful sentiment. He finally said, his voice soft, "I'll make sure it's done with care." We discussed the practicalities, the time frame, the cost, but my mind was elsewhere. I pictured Silas, my son, holding the watch in his hands, reading the inscription, finally understanding. A wave of bittersweet emotion washed over me. This wasn't how I'd envisioned things. This Christmas, I had imagined us all together, a happy family. But Silas had other plans. "Just close friends," he'd said, his tone dismissive. "It's not a big deal, Mom." But it was. It was a huge deal. It was his birthday. It was Christmas. It was family. "Ready for your estimate." Theo's voice brought me back to the present. He handed me a slip of paper. The price was reasonable, but the true cost of this gesture was immeasurable. It was a piece of my heart, a silent plea for reconciliation. I paid him, thanked him, and walked out into the afternoon sun, the jingle of the bell a faint echo in my ears. The weight in my purse felt heavier now, not just from the receipt, but from the hope it carried. The fragile hope that this small act could bridge the chasm that had opened between my son and me. The street was bustling with holiday shoppers, their faces alight with festive cheer. But my own joy felt distant, veiled by a layer of uncertainty. Would he understand? Would he accept this olive branch? Or would it simply be another reminder of the distance between us? Rain lashed against the living room window, mirroring the storm inside me. Eleanor had sent me photos of Silas's birthday party. A casual "look what you missed" Mom text message accompanying the cheerful images. I scrolled through them, each picture a fresh stab of hurt. There he was, my Silas, surrounded by friends, laughing, a slice of cake halfway to his mouth. Eleanor and Julian were there, beaming, arms around him. It looked like everyone in the world was there except me. His own mother. He said it was just close friends. I murmured to the empty room, the words catching in my throat. The phone slipped from my grasp and landed softly on the sofa cushion, the bright screen mocking me with its display of joyous celebration. I hadn't even received a phone call, not even a happy birthday text from my own son. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to ward off the chill that had nothing to do with the November rain. The house felt colder than usual, emptier. Ray's absence echoed in the silence, a familiar ache that intensified on days like this. He would have known what to say, what to do. He always knew how to bridge the gap between Silas and me, especially during those turbulent teenage years. Now, that bridge seemed to have crumbled completely, leaving me stranded on one side, Silas on the other. "He's just busy," I whispered, trying to convince myself, but the words felt hollow, a flimsy shield against the sharp sting of rejection. My gaze drifted to the mantelpiece, where a small, tarnished silver pocket watch lay nestled among framed family photos. Ray's watch. He'd treasured it, carried it every day. I hadn't touched it since he passed. It was too painful, a tangible reminder of everything I'd lost. But now, in the quiet solitude of the evening, something drew me to it. I reached out, my fingers tracing the cool metal of the casing. It felt heavy in my palm, the weight of memories pressing down on me. Opening the watch, I saw that it had stopped. The hands were frozen at 3:30, a poignant reminder of how time had stopped for me in so many ways since Ray's passing. And now, with Silas seemingly drifting away, time seemed to be accelerating, pulling him further and further out of my reach. "He used to love this watch," I said softly, remembering Silas as a little boy, fascinated by the intricate workings of the timepiece. He would sit for hours, watching Ray wind it, listening to the delicate ticking. Suddenly, an idea sparked in my mind, a flicker of warmth in the desolate landscape of my emotions. I wouldn't let this distance grow. I wouldn't let Silas forget the bond we shared, the memories we'd created. I wouldn't let Ray's memory fade. This watch, a symbol of time and connection, could be a bridge between us. I carefully placed the watch back on the mantelpiece. Tomorrow, I would take it to Theo, the old watchmaker downtown. He'd been Ray's friend, and I knew he could restore the watch to its former glory. Maybe, just maybe, it could also help restore the connection between Silas and me. There was a small jeweler next door to Theo's shop. I could have an inscription engraved, something special, something that would remind Silas of his father, of me, of the love that bound us together, despite the current distance. The rain outside had softened to a gentle drizzle. A single ray of moonlight broke through the clouds, illuminating the pocket watch on the mantelpiece. I looked at it, a glimmer of hope rising within me. It wasn't much, but it was a start, a small act of defiance against the silence, against the growing chasm between mother and son. Maybe, just maybe, this Christmas, time wouldn't just pass by, but would bring us back together. Rain lashed against the window pane, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. Silas' words, "Just close friends," Mom, echoed in the quiet hallway. I ran my hand along the cool, dark wood of the hallway cabinet, a familiar comfort in this unfamiliar ache. It was a piece my husband, Ray, had refinished years ago, a labor of love he'd poured his heart into, just like everything else he did. My fingers traced the grooves, each one a memory. He'd always said this cabinet held our family's history, the small, precious things that whispered stories of who we were. I hadn't opened it in months, maybe even a year, not since Ray had been gone. But tonight, something pulled me toward it. I needed to feel connected to him, to something solid and real in the swirling uncertainty of Silas' rejection. The latch clicked open, the scent of old wood and something faintly sweet, like Ray's pipe tobacco, wafting out. Inside, nestled amongst old photo albums and forgotten trinkets, was a small, velvet-lined box. I knew what it held before I even opened it. Ray's pocket watch. He'd treasured it, a gift from his own father. I lifted the box, its weight surprising. The velvet was worn, the brass clasp tarnished. With trembling fingers, I opened it. The watch lay nestled inside, its face clouded with age. It hadn't ticked in years, silence like the voice I longed to hear again. I picked it up, the cool metal a stark contrast to the burning in my eyes. It was heavy, solid, a tangible link to the past. I traced the inscription on the back. To my son, on your 18th birthday. Ray had meant to give it to Silas, a symbol of the passage into manhood, a connection between father and son. But he never got the chance. A wave of grief washed over me, the familiar ache settling in my chest. Silas was turning 25 now, so much older than Ray had ever been. He was building his own life, forging his own path, leaving me behind. I clutched the watch tightly, the cool metal pressing against my skin, a small, cold comfort. I wondered if Silas even remembered his father's watch, if it held any meaning for him now. I closed the box, the soft click echoing in the quiet hallway. What was I doing? Wallowing in the past. Silas had made his choice. His life was his own. I needed to respect that, to move on. But even as I told myself this, a small, defiant spark flickered within me. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way to bridge the gap, to remind Silas of the connection we shared, of the love that still bound us, even in the face of hurt and misunderstanding. I opened the box again, lifting the watch. The inscription on the back caught my eye. To my son, on your 18th birthday. Beneath that, there was space, enough space for a few more words. An idea began to form, a whisper in the back of my mind. It was a long shot, a desperate hope, but I clung to it like a lifeline. I carefully placed the watch back in its box and closed the cabinet. The hallway was still dark, the rain still falling, but something had shifted within me. The heavy ache in my chest hadn't disappeared, but it was lighter now, replaced by a quiet resolve. I knew what I had to do. I went to the phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. It rang twice before a gruff voice answered. Theo's Clockworks. It was Theo, the old watchmaker Ray used to frequent. He'd always been a bit of a grump, but he was the best in the business, and I knew he'd understand. Theo, I said, my voice trembling slightly. It's Karen Miller, Ray's wife. A moment of silence followed. Then Karen, how are you? Haven't heard from you in ages. I'm all right, Theo. Listen, I have Ray's pocket watch, the one he meant to give to Silas. And yes, Theo said, his voice softening, a beautiful piece. What about it? It stopped. And I'd like to get it fixed. For Silas' birthday. Of course, Theo said. Bring it in. I'll take a look. There's something else. I hesitated. I'd like to add an inscription below the one that's already there. An inscription, Theo repeated. What did you have in mind? I took a deep breath. I wanted to say, and still loved, always, Mom. My voice cracked slightly on the last word. Another silence. Then Theo cleared his throat. All right, Karen. I can do that. It'll take a few days, but I'll have it ready for you. Thank you, Theo, I whispered, a tear tracing a path down my cheek. Thank you so much. I hung up the phone, a sliver of hope beginning to bloom in the darkness. It was a small gesture, a simple act of remembrance, but maybe, just maybe, it would be enough. Maybe it would be the key to unlocking the silence that had grown between Silas and me, a way to remind him that even though his father was gone, the love that bound us together remained, stronger and more enduring than any hurt or misunderstanding. It wouldn't be the same as having Ray there, but it would be something, a tangible piece of the past, carrying a message of love into the future. And as I looked out at the rain-soaked streets, I felt a glimmer of anticipation, a quiet certainty that something good was about to happen, something that would change everything. The kitchen table felt cold beneath my fingertips. Silas's words, "It's just close friends," Mom, echoed in the quiet house. Just close friends. I wasn't considered close anymore. The silence stretched, broken only by the rhythmic tick of the old clock on the wall. My gaze drifted to the dusty china cabinet, a repository of memories, of happier times. My hand trembled as I reached for the key. Inside, nestled among delicate teacups and forgotten trinkets, lay a small, velvet-lined box. It held Ray's pocket watch, a gift from his own father passed down through generations. I hadn't seen it since the funeral. Opening the box, I traced the inscription on the back, "To my son, may time always be on your side." A bittersweet smile touched my lips. Ray would have wanted Silas to have this. He would have wanted us to be close. The watch wasn't working, of course. It hadn't been wound in years, but somehow, holding its smooth, cool surface in my palm, I felt a flicker of not quite hope, but something akin to resolve. This watch, it represented time, lost time, time we could never get back, time I desperately wanted to reclaim with Silas. Maybe, I whispered to the empty room, maybe this is the way. The next morning, I carefully wrapped the watch in a soft cloth and placed it in my purse. I knew a watchmaker, Theo, in the old part of town. He'd worked on Ray's other watches years ago. "Good morning, Theo," I said, stepping into his small, cluttered shop. The air smelled of oil and metal, a familiar scent that brought back a rush of memories. "Karen, it's been a while." Theo greeted me, peering over his spectacles. "What can I do for you?" "I have something sentimental," I said, placing the watch on the counter. "It's my late husband's. I'd like to have it repaired." Theo examined the watch carefully, turning it over in his hands. "It's a beautiful piece," he said. "A bit of work, but I think I can get it running again." There's something else, I added, hesitant at first. I'd like to add an inscription on the back, below the existing one. Certainly, Theo replied, pulling out a small notepad. What would you like it to say? I took a deep breath. This was it. This was the key, and may we always share it. I wanted it to be a message, a silent plea for reconciliation, a reminder that time, especially family time, is precious. Theo nodded, jotting down the words. A lovely sentiment, he said. He quoted me a price and a time frame, and I left the shop feeling a strange mix of anticipation and nervousness. The days that followed were a blur. I went through the motions of my daily routine, but my thoughts kept returning to the watch, to Silas, to the widening gulf between us. I hadn't spoken to him since the birthday incident. He hadn't called. The silence was heavy, suffocating. Finally, the day arrived when Theo called to tell me the watch was ready. I picked it up, the velvet box feeling heavier now, imbued with a new significance. The inscription was perfect, discreetly placed beneath the original, a silent addition to the family narrative. Now the question remained, how to give it to him. I considered simply mailing it, but that felt impersonal. I wanted to see his face, to gauge his reaction, but the thought of facing him directly, of risking further rejection, filled me with dread. Christmas was approaching. Perhaps that was the time. A time for family, for forgiveness, for second chances. Maybe, just maybe, this small gesture, this repaired piece of the past, could bridge the distance that had grown between us. Maybe this Christmas, time could heal our wounds. The bell above Theo's door chimed a melancholic little tune as I pushed it open, the scent of old metal and oil hitting me like a comforting wave. Theo hunched over his workbench, peered at me through his magnifying glass, then pushed it up onto his forehead. "Karen, what a surprise. What can I do for you?" he asked, his voice a warm rumble. I walked over to the counter, clutching the small velvet pouch in my hand. "I was hoping you could take a look at something for me, Theo," I said, my voice a little shaky. I opened the pouch and gently placed my late husband Ray's pocket watch onto the worn leather surface. Theo's thick eyebrows rose. "Ray's watch," he murmured, picking it up with surprisingly delicate fingers. "Haven't seen this in years." He turned it over in his hands, the dull gold glinting in the afternoon light. "It hasn't run in ages," I admitted, tracing the smooth curve of its casing with my fingertip. "Not since I trailed off, unable to say the words aloud." Theo nodded knowingly. "Since Ray passed," he finished for me, his eyes filled with a quiet understanding. He gave the watch a gentle shake, listening intently. "Doesn't sound too promising." He sighed, then clicked it open, revealing the intricate workings within. He poked around with a tiny tool, muttering technical terms I didn't understand. "The mainspring is definitely gone," he concluded, "and a couple of the gears are stripped. Might need to replace some parts." "Can you fix it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. This watch it was more than just a timepiece. It was a piece of Ray, a tangible connection to the man I loved and lost. It had been his father's before him, passed down through generations. And now I wanted it to be ready for Silas. Theo squinted at the tiny mechanisms. "Well," he began, his voice thoughtful, It'll be a bit of a challenge. Some of these parts aren't made anymore. Might have to scavenge for them." He looked up at me, his eyes twinkling with a spark of something I recognized as a craftsman's passion. "But," he added, a hint of a smile playing on his lips, "I reckon I can do it." A wave of relief washed over me. "That's wonderful, Theo." "Thank you now," he said, closing the watch and setting it back down on the counter. "Is there anything else?" I hesitated. This was the most important part. "Yes, actually," I replied, reaching into my purse. I pulled out a small slip of paper and handed it to him. "I was wondering if you could engrave something on the inside of the case." Theo unfolded the paper and read it silently, his brow furrowing slightly. He looked up at me, a question in his eyes. "Are you sure about this, Karen?" he asked gently. I took a deep breath. "Yes, I am," I said firmly. "I wanted to say exactly that." He nodded slowly, folding the paper back up. "All right then," he said. "I'll do my best. It might take a few weeks to get everything sorted, though finding the right parts, you know." "That's fine, Theo," I said. "Take your time. I'm not in any rush." I paid him a generous deposit and carefully placed the velvet pouch back into my purse. As I walked out of Theo's shop, the afternoon sun felt a little warmer on my face. The chime of the bell followed me out, a hopeful melody in the crisp air. It was a small step, perhaps, but I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in a long time. It was the start of something new, something I hoped would bring Silas and me closer again. I knew Ray would have approved. He always treasured this watch, not just for its monetary value, but for what it represented: family, legacy, and the enduring power of love. And now, with a few carefully chosen words etched into its golden heart, it was about to represent something more: a second chance. The drive home felt lighter, a sense of anticipation bubbling inside me. Christmas was still a few months away, but in my heart, it felt like the season of hope had already begun. The bell above Theo's door chimed a gentle welcome as I stepped inside, the scent of oil and metal hanging faintly in the air. "Back so soon, Mrs. Carter?" Theo greeted me from behind his workbench, a magnifying glass perched on his nose. "I haven't forgotten about your husband's watch. Just needed a few more days to source the right parts." I smiled, relieved. "That's wonderful news, Theo. Actually, there's something else." I hesitated, tracing the worn leather of my handbag strap. "I've been thinking about what I want engraved." He nodded, setting down his tools. "Of course. It's a special piece, deserves a special message." His kind eyes held a knowing look, as if he understood the weight of this task, the emotions swirling beneath my calm exterior. My son, Silas, hadn't invited me to his birthday dinner. "Close friends only," he'd said, a dismissal that stung more than any sharp word. He claimed it wasn't personal, just a small gathering. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling of being shut out, irrelevant. This watch, this inscription, it was more than just a birthday gift. It was a bridge, a silent plea for connection across the chasm that had opened between us. I took a deep breath. I'd like it to say to Silas, "With love always." Dad would be so proud. Theo jotted it down on a small pad, his pen scratching softly against the paper. Simple, but powerful. he remarked, glancing up at me. Anything else? I paused, considering. This was my chance to say what I hadn't been able to voice to Silas directly, to express the pride, the love that remained unwavering, despite the hurt. Could you also add the date of his graduation? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Silas's graduation had been a moment of pure joy, a shared victory. Ray, my late husband, would have been bursting with pride if he'd been there to see it. The memory, bittersweet now, brought a lump to my throat. Theo nodded again, his expression softening. Absolutely. It's a day worth remembering. He picked up the watch, turning it over in his hands. This watch, he began, his voice thoughtful. It's seen a lot of time, hasn't it? I managed a small smile. It has. Ray cherished it. He always said it was a reminder that time is precious, not to be wasted. The irony wasn't lost on me. I felt like I was wasting time, losing precious moments with my son. I think he'd be happy to know it's going to Silas, I said, my voice catching slightly. Theo smiled warmly. I think so too. He pointed to a small display case filled with intricate watch faces. I also managed to find a replacement crystal. The original was quite scratched. He held up the watch, the new crystal gleaming under the shop lights. It looked almost brand new, resurrected from the wear and tear of years. It's beautiful, Theo. Thank you. My heart ached with a mix of sadness and a flicker of hope. Perhaps this restored watch could also help restore the bond with my son. When do you think it will be ready? I asked, eager to have it in my hands, to pass it on to Silas. Give me another week, Theo replied, carefully placing the watch back on his workbench. I want to make sure everything is perfect. I nodded, the word perfect resonating within me. It wasn't just about the watch anymore. It was about the message it carried, the silent conversation between a mother and her son, the hope for a future where time wasn't wasted, but cherished. I'll be back then, I said, turning to leave. As I stepped out into the afternoon sun, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This Christmas, Silas would receive more than just a watch. He would receive a piece of his father, a piece of his history, and a piece of my heart. The crisp morning air nipped at my cheeks as I stepped into the post office. I clutched the small, padded envelope in my hand. Its contents a secret I hadn't shared, not even with Eleanor. Good morning, I said to the postal worker behind the counter. He barely glanced up. Priority mail. Please, I told him, sliding the envelope across the counter. He waited, slapped a label on it, and told me the price. I paid, my mind racing with thoughts of Silas, his birthday dinner, a lavish affair I wasn't invited to, still stung. Just close friends and family, he'd said, the implication clear as day. Eleanor and Julian, of course, were there, but his own mother, was deemed not close enough. This small package, however, held something far more precious than any birthday gift I could have bought him. Inside, nestled amongst soft tissue paper, lay Ray's pocket watch. I'd finally taken it to Theo, the watchmaker, a few weeks ago. It's been sitting in my drawer for years, I'd explained, my voice catching slightly. My late husband's, Theo, with his kind eyes and gentle hands, had assured me he could restore it to its former glory. And he had. The watch, once dull and scratched, now gleamed in the light, its intricate gears humming with renewed life. But it wasn't just the restoration that made it special. I had asked Theo to engrave a small inscription on the inside of the case, a message only Silas would understand. A line from a song Ray used to sing to him as a child, a lullaby that had faded into the recesses of our memories. May your days be filled with sunshine, and your nights with starry skies. Now, as I handed the package to the postal worker, a wave of emotion washed over me. Sadness for Ray, gone too soon. Hurt for the distance that had grown between Silas and me, but also a flicker of hope. Perhaps this small gesture, this tangible piece of our shared past, could bridge the gap. Make sure this gets there safely, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The postal worker grunted in response, tossing the package onto a growing pile of outgoing mail. I watched as it disappeared amongst the others, a tiny brown parcel holding a weighty piece of my heart. Walking out of the post office, the sunlight felt warmer on my face. The Christmas decorations adorning the lamppost seemed to twinkle a little brighter. I hadn't put up any decorations at my house this year. What was the point, I'd thought, with no one to share them with? But now, a tiny seed of anticipation began to bloom within me. Maybe, just maybe, this Christmas would be different. Maybe this small act of remembrance would spark a reconciliation, a reconnection. I knew Silas. He cherished memories, valued sentimentality. He may have pushed me away, but I held onto the hope that this piece of his father, this tangible echo of happier times, would resonate with him in a way that words never could. I hadn't told him I was sending the watch. I wanted it to be a surprise, a quiet gesture of love in the midst of the hurt. I imagined his face when he opened the package, his surprise at seeing his father's watch, restored and gleaming. I imagined him reading the inscription, the melody of that old lullaby echoing in his mind. I imagined him remembering the bedtime stories, the fishing trips, the countless moments of father-son bonding that time and distance had threatened to erase. I stopped at a small cafe and ordered a coffee. Sitting by the window, watching the world go by, I allowed myself a moment of quiet reflection. The bitterness of the past few weeks began to fade, replaced by a fragile sense of peace. I had done what I could. The rest was up to Silas. The rest was up to time. And as I sipped my coffee, the faint scent of pine needles from the Christmas tree across the street drifted towards me, carrying with it a whisper of hope for the days and the Christmases to come. Christmas morning dawned crisp and bright, a stark contrast to the chill that had settled between Silas and me. It had been several days since his birthday, several days of strained silence, several days since he'd told me, "It's just close friends, Mom. You wouldn't enjoy it." My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text from Silas, a picture. My breath hitched. It was Ray's pocket watch. The crystal gleamed. The gold case shone warmly against the deep green wrapping paper. He'd opened it. My heart hammered against my ribs. There was another text. "Mom." It read simply. Then another. This is incredible." My fingers trembled as I typed back, "Merry Christmas, sweetheart." He called a few minutes later, his voice thick with emotion. "Mom," he began, I don't know what to say. I could hear the emotion swirling in his voice. You had this fixed?" he asked. His voice choked. I smiled, picturing him holding the watch, tracing the inscription I'd had Theo add. "It was time," I replied softly. It was time to get it working again. There was a long pause, filled only with the crackling of the phone line. "The inscription," he finally said, his voice trailing off. Beneath the restored glass face, beneath the newly polished hands, nestled on the watch's inner casing, were the words, "Time spent with you is never wasted. Love, Dad." I debated long and hard about those words. They weren't just for Silas. They were for me too. A reminder of Ray, of our life together, of the love that still bound us, even in death. And a subtle message to Silas. "It's perfect," Silas whispered. He always used to say that to me. When I was little, I'd pester him to play. Even when he was busy, he'd ruffle my hair and say, "Time spent with you is never wasted." He meant it, Silas, I said, my own voice catching now. He cherished every moment. Another silence stretched between us, but this one felt different. Not strained, but heavy with unspoken words, with years of memories and emotions. "I miss him, Mom," Silas finally said, his voice raw. "I miss him so much." Tears welled in my eyes. "I know, sweetheart," I whispered. "I miss him too." I was a jerk," Silas said suddenly, his voice tight with regret. "About your birthday, about everything." He paused, taking a shaky breath. "I've been so caught up in everything else, I haven't been a very good son." My heart ached for him. "Oh, Silas," I said softly, "you are a wonderful son. You've been through so much. But you should have been there," he insisted. "It was your birthday." "I should have," he trailed off again, the unspoken words hanging in the air. "It's okay, Silas," I reassured him. "Really, it's okay." I knew he needed to say it, needed to acknowledge the hurt he'd caused. And I needed to hear it. "Eleanor and Julian, they mean well," he continued, stumbling over the words. "But sometimes I feel like they're trying to, I don't know, replace you." My heart softened. He was trying to explain, to bridge the gap that had grown between us. "They could never replace me, Silas," I told him gently. "No one could. I know that." He said quickly, "I know. It's just," he sighed, "I've let things get out of hand. I should have included you. You're my mom." "I understand," I said, my voice filled with a warmth I hadn't felt in days. "We both need to do a better job, Silas, of communicating, of being there for each other." "Yes," he agreed. "Yes, we do." There was another pause, this one filled with a sense of understanding, a silent promise of a new beginning. So I said, trying to lighten the mood, "What did Eleanor and Julian think of their gifts?" Silas chuckled, the sound a balm to my soul. "They loved them," he replied. "Julian was particularly thrilled with the new golf clubs. He's already planning a trip to the driving range." He paused, then added softly, "Thank you, Mom, for everything." "You're welcome, sweetheart," I replied, smiling through my tears. "Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas, Mom," he said, and in that moment, I knew that the most precious gift I'd received that Christmas wasn't the beautiful hand-painted ornament Eleanor had given me, or the cashmere scarf from Julian. It was the renewed connection with my son, a bond reforged by a simple pocket watch, and the enduring love of a father who was gone, but never forgotten. The silence between us had finally been broken, replaced by the quiet murmur of a love rekindled, a relationship healed. The phone's gentle chime broke the quiet of Christmas Eve. It was Gavin, Silas's son, his small voice full of excitement. "Grandma, can you come over? Dad's acting weird, and he won't let us open presents yet." My heart skipped a beat. "Weird how, sweetie?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Gavin's reply was muffled, as if he was cupping the phone. "He keeps looking at this box, like he's going to cry." Intrigued and a little concerned, I told Gavin I'd be right over. As I drove to Silas's house, I couldn't shake the feeling that this had something to do with the pocket watch. I hadn't heard from Silas since I'd dropped it off at the jeweler's, and part of me worried he'd been angry about me getting it fixed without his permission. Silas's house was bustling with the usual Christmas Eve chaos. Eleanor and Julian were there, along with their 2 children, all chattering excitedly around the brightly lit tree. But Silas stood apart, holding a small, velvet-lined box. He looked up as I entered, his eyes red-rimmed. "Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He opened the box, revealing the gleaming gold pocket watch. It looked brand new, the inscription I'd added glinting in the light. "For Silas, always with you, love, Dad." Silas choked back a sob. "You don't understand," he stammered. I walked over to him, placing a hand on his arm. "Theo, the watchmaker he called me. He said he found a small, hidden compartment. Inside, there was a folded piece of paper." I paused, watching Silas's face. He reached into the box and pulled out a tiny, yellowed piece of paper, unfolding it with trembling hands. It was a short note, written in my late husband, Ray's familiar scrawl. "To my son, Silas," it read, "if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. Remember that I loved you more than words can say. This watch is a reminder of the time we shared, and the time yet to come. Be kind, be brave, and never forget that you are loved." Silas crumpled the note, tears streaming down his face. He looked at me, his eyes full of a mixture of pain and gratitude. "Why didn't you tell me about this?" he asked, his voice trembling. I thought you'd forgotten about Dad, about us." I took his hands in mine. "Never," I said softly. "Your father was, and is, a huge part of my life, and you, my son, are my world. I would never forget either of you." He pulled me into a hug that felt like it mended years of unspoken hurt and distance. "The watch, it's beautiful," Silas said, his voice still choked with emotion. "Thank you, Mom." He clipped the watch to his belt loop, a gesture that felt like a reclaiming of a lost part of himself. Eleanor and Julian came over, their faces softened with understanding. They had witnessed the quiet rift between Silas and me, and now they witnessed the healing. "It's time to open presents," I announced, trying to lighten the mood, though my own eyes were still wet with tears. Gavin, who had been patiently observing the scene, rushed forward. "Yea," he shouted, his small hands grabbing at the brightly wrapped gifts under the tree. As the family gathered around, the warmth of the Christmas lights reflecting in their smiling faces, I felt a profound sense of peace. The pocket watch, a symbol of time and memory, had brought us back together, reminding us of the enduring power of love and forgiveness. Silas caught my eye, a small smile playing on his lips. He knew, without needing to say the words, that this Christmas we had received the most precious gift of all, the gift of family, reunited and whole.